Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending upon where you are around the world. I am Marcus Holmes, the HR Passion Guy, bringing you another installment of Passion Fridays, where we discuss topics that we're passionate about, topics that intersect with people, their purpose, living in the center of their passion, and topics that we hope that will inspire you to live in the center of your passion as well. Take a moment, whether you're watching us here on LinkedIn Live, from which we are emanating today, or via Restream on Facebook Live or on Twitch TV or YouTube events. Take a moment and click share. Tag 5 of your closest connections, 5 of your more popular Facebook friends or YouTube followers or subscribers to join in today's celebration and today's call to action around Juneteenth. So take a moment and do that right now. I think I'm going to click share too during this time to invite others to join us. Just want to make sure we're circulating across all platforms. And I am excited to be here and that you are also here with me. All right, fantastic. We will across all platforms. Fantastic. All right. And so we are talking today, and there are replay snippets that will be played throughout, so that you are aware of that at the outset. Thank you, Wendell McLaughlin, Carolyn Bishop, and others that are joining across platforms. I hope you will click share and tag someone to join us as we discuss and celebrate an important holiday, which has become uh, more well known and more well celebrated in recent months and times. Juneteenth, it's also known as Emancipation Day, is a celebration of the date that the Union Army's Major General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, and declared the end of both the Civil War and slavery, June 19th, 1965. Although the Emancipation Proclamation declared the end of slavery January 1st, 1963, it wasn't until 2.5 years later that the war ended and all slaves were emancipated. Juneteenth was first celebrated in 1866 with Texans memorializing the momentous occasion as a day of celebration and community. And on June 17th, President Joe Biden signed a bill making Juneteenth a national holiday, with most federal employees immediately being given a day off. And since it will fall on the weekend, uh, federal government will mark it on a bit on the business day. President Biden said, and I quote, "Great nations don't ignore the most painful moments. They don't ignore those moments in the past. They embrace them," unquote. Even before his action, several companies had decided to recognize the day on their own, and some are also donating to fight inequality. So I wanted to list a few of those companies now before we go to our first clip. National Grid, which is an energy company, added Juneteenth as a paid holiday in 2021 for all of its US based employees. Its statement says, quote, "Combating systemic racism and standing with our Black colleagues and communities in solidarity have always been part of National Grid's commitment to inclusion, equity, and diversity," unquote. And that was from Natalie Edwards, their chief diversity officer, in a press release. She goes on to say, quote, "Declaring Juneteenth a company holiday is a symbol of our dedication to honoring Black Americans who have suffered the impacts of racism throughout US history," unquote. Other companies such as Best Buy and Instacart, who says in their statement, employees are encouraged, quote, "to use this day to reflect, listen, learn, and engage in critical conversations about racial injustice," unquote, from the founder of Purva Mete. Target, another company, is providing, large company, right, is providing team members with the opportunity to observe the day however they prefer, through education, service, or celebration. In their news release, they said, quote, Juneteenth will remain an annual company holiday moving forward, unquote. Louisville Water Company. It's a water utility company which serves the city where Breonna Taylor was shot and killed during a police raid in March 2020. And they instituted the holiday, quote, from the president. Spencer Bruce says, acknowledging Juneteenth as a company holiday is a way for Louisville Water to take positive action. We want our employees to know that this day is important to the company and to reflect upon what it signifies in our history, the ending of slavery in this country, unquote. Nike's president had this to say, John Donahoe, at the time that they announced in a letter to their employees that they would be celebrating Juneteenth. Quote, at Nike Inc., we aspire to be a leader in building a diverse, inclusive team and culture. We want to be better than society as a whole. As I've listened deeply during the last 6 months and over the past few years, what I've learned is that many have felt a disconnect between our external brand and your internal experience. You have told me that we have not consistently supported, recognized, and celebrated our own Black teammates in a manner they deserve. This needs to change, unquote. Other companies, Lyft, NFL, the commissioner sent a letter to the teams. And part of the quote is, quote, the power of this historical feat in our country's blemished history is felt each year, but there is no question that the magnitude of this event weighs even more heavily today in the current climate. It is a day to reflect on our past, but more importantly, to consider how each one of us can continue to show up and band together to work toward a better future, unquote. Other companies, Postmates, their CEO, Bastian Lehman, announced on Twitter last year, quote, not just in response to the moment, but to allow all of us time to reflect on the Black American experience from 1619, to today, and the actions required to move us forward together, unquote. Spotify, Square, Twitter, JCPenney's, MasterCard, Vox, Adobe, Eventbrite, NBA, Visco, Quicken Loans, United Talent Agency, who had this to say, quote, UTA will annually, recognize and observe Juneteenth and shut down business throughout U.S. offices. The intention behind participating in Juneteenth is rooted in wanting to give the United Talent Agency's employees the opportunity, if they choose, to continue to celebrate, focus on additional conversations and education, or use the day to honor this moment in the way that feels best for them, unquote. Endeavor, Live365, which is a radio internet company, at Live365, quote, we will be using the day to learn more about Black American history and culture, and our hopes is that more businesses do the same. Tons more companies, but I'll name some more. And I'm intentionally naming companies because those of you that are out here looking for positions and careers, if you go to the U Coaching series, if you join my U Coaching series, it tells you one of the things that you do in your resume and research is research the organizations that resonate with you. Research the organizations whose values reflect your values today or the future values you intend to have. And if companies aren't standing up in a time where they can celebrate Black people, you should take note of that. And I love that companies are in the diversity, equity, inclusion, I say access and belonging initiatives and programs, recognizing people of color. But that does cover Black people, but it doesn't specifically elevate Black people. A lot of people say BIPOC, right? Black, Indigenous, and persons of color, right? And I would recommend to any organization, if that is what your desire is, to have a broad brush for all persons of color, that you elevate two of the most oppressed segments of our society, Blacks and Indigenous people. and there are celebrations for each. And you should be willing to highlight them instead of a broad painted brush to highlight Black people. So I love that a lot of these organizations are calling out specifically, not just persons of color. Juneteenth is about Black people. And if you have trouble, if you have difficulty saying Black people, I invite you to begin having depolarizing conversations in your organizations where you don't want to elevate the concerns, the pathology, the history of Black people. Okay. And that's a whole nother show about all of the legislation that's cropping up. That's this anti-woke legislation to prevent certain types of information to be shared and discussed, that it might lend to people feeling bad about their history, feeling bad about what happened. There is a part of our history that should make us feel bad. It doesn't have to make us feel guilty necessarily, but it should make you feel bad. Americans should hang their head in some shame that while we say all men are equal, we haven't treated all men and women, all Black people, all Indigenous people, and other persons of color as equal. And to ignore this fact, to say that was the past and that is not happening today, would be the reason to hang our head the lowest in this country and amid a world organization of neighbors, right? Premier Lacrosse League, Influx Data, 19th News are other companies that are also giving a paid day off. Boston Corporation in Culver City, California, it's an accounting firm. Juneteenth is a holiday, they say, quote, a day for celebration, connection, and education, unquote. Citrine Informatics, Harper Plus Scott, Flatiron Family Medical, Hire Club, PagerDuty, Palumi, Social Driver, Universe, Pray Tell, Spark Capital, Wonderful Sauce, M Train, Civic, Bottle Rocket, One Planet, Financial Force, Optimizely, Accordion Partners, Madfish Digital, Sequoia Capital, JUV Consulting, Remind, Neural Leadership Institute, Zenefits, and Catalyst Partners, among many more. This list is not exhaustive, but it is a list that I did want to indeed share. And so as I continue to share, I want to take you to a clip of from a Juneteenth presentation on an excerpt from What is the Fourth to a Slave, as we think about Emancipation Day and Independence Day, and think about why this day, Emancipation Day, is more relevant to African Americans than Independence Day. You're watching Passion Fridays. Already declared it. Must I argue the wrongfulness of slavery? Is that a question for Republicans? Is it to be settled by the rules of logic and argumentation as a matter beset with great difficulty, involving a doubtful application of the principle of justice, hard to be understood? How should I look today in the presence of Americans dividing and subdividing a discourse to show that men have a natural right to freedom? Speaking of it relatively and positively, negatively and affirmatively, to do so would be to make myself ridiculous and to offer an insult to your understanding. There is not a man beneath the canopy of heaven that does not know that slavery is wrong for him. What am I to argue that it is wrong to make men brutes, to rob them of their liberty, to work them without wages, to keep them ignorant of their relations to fellow men, to beat them with sticks, to flay their flesh with the lash, to load their limbs with irons, to hunt them with dogs, to sell them at auction, to sunder their families, to knock out their teeth, to burn their flesh, to starve them in obedience and submission to their masters? Must I argue that a system thus marked with blood and stained with pollution is wrong? No. I will not. I have better employment for my time and strength than such arguments would imply. What then remains to be argued? Is it that slavery is not divine, that God did not establish it, that our doctors of divinity are mistaken? There is blasphemy in the thought that which is inhuman cannot be divine. Who can reason on such a proposition? They that can may. I cannot. The time for such argument is past. And that's from Frederick Douglass's speech. What is the fourth to the slave? So I'm asking you, what is Juneteenth to the free? That was an excerpt of a reading of Frederick Douglass's What is the Fourth to the Slave? And I posed the question, then what is the Juneteenth to the free? I'm Marcus Holmes, an HR passion guy, and I'm thankful that you're joining us, whether you're watching us live or via restream live on LinkedIn Live, Twitch TV, YouTube event, or Facebook. I appreciate that you are joining us as we're talking about Juneteenth. You know, there are so many organizations that are celebrating Juneteenth, and I did just want to share a few of the ideas that some organizations may be employing. You know, some are giving paid holidays, made it a paid holiday. Some are doing celebrations. Some are doing celebrations of the arts. Some are doing many different activities that are both in person and hybrid, which is what I would really strongly encourage employers to do to keep those employees that are working remotely connected, ensure that you have good live stream opportunities for them to partake and to comment in what's going on. Juneteenth ideas for work and events and activities that employees can engage in to celebrate the holiday are great to implement. You can have office barbecues or picnics. Be careful with barbecues and picnics because there are some terms in picnics and term in the very term picnic and in barbecue that might lend themselves to areas of sensitivity. So be careful utilizing those words or as catchphrases, but you can also do office trivia, lunch and learn sessions. The purpose of these are to celebrate and commemorate Juneteenth and make employees culturally aware of the holiday. There's a lot of information out there, but not everybody is culturally aware of the holiday. But this holiday does celebrate Black heritage. It commemorates the end of a horrific era, but it does celebrate Black freedom. And Black freedom means so many different things to people, but these cultural holiday celebrations like Juneteenth for employers can really be great diversity, equity, inclusion, access, and belonging boosting activities. So some of the ideas that I've gathered from a number of resources would include decorating the workplace or having a commemorative backdrop, virtual backdrop that you send out so that everybody can use it in their virtual meetings. The Juneteenth colors are red, green, and black. And the significance for each color, red stands for the blood of millions of enslaved people and Africans that was shed, okay, and continues to be shed. Black stands for the rich Black culture. The color also represents our melanin and the African diaspora unification. And there are so many ways that Black is used, maybe negatively, Black sheep and different things. So here's a chance to flip that on its head, to use the brilliance of Black to demonstrate Black culture. So use Black as a consistent color along with red in your themes. Green represents fertility, hope, new life, productivity, independence, and prosperity. So you can think about green in many ways, and there are some green ways that you can help to lift and elevate the causes of your Black employees. You can make activities interactive. You can have your team members make the decorations. You could have your team members come up with a virtual backdrop as a contest. Crafting decorations is an excellent way for the team to come together and bond. And again, if it's hybrid, to include hybrid people in the decision making and the brainstorming. You can include banners, paper flowers, balloon arches, whatever you want to do. Get as creative as you can and use those colors in any kind of flag that you might create and decorate. Of course, I mentioned trivia, questions like what year did New Jersey abolish slavery? You might want to ask specific questions about what the states did. How many states actually commemorate it? Those are questions where there are answers, and I invite you to find those answers. I won't share those here, but you can give them time to study the Black history, or you can see what they know and divide them in several groups, let them come up with teams, and they could win points, the groups that answer those correctly, and, you know, give the points or give the opportunity for them to use those points at some point in the future. Of course, there can be lunch and learns, right? You can inform attendees about the event and what area of Juneteenth you're going to cover, the length of the event, who will present, all of that information as you would in event planning. You could collectively donate to charity. I've seen some really successful donations to charities and within organizations, employee sponsored. So you can have a Juneteenth charity week. You could have it a Juneteenth fitness week, a Juneteenth, so that you give to charities that are helping people be healthy, to charities that are helping people find cures, whatever your team would find as something that they could donate their money or time to, right? You could have a Juneteenth walk or festival or talent show where people can participate. Be careful in the using of talent show because there is within the African American diaspora a sense of performing as minstrels for the entertainment of the oppressor. So you have to know that, and you have to let that guide you in your development of talent shows. You can host a virtual Juneteenth party and invite a special guest. Get someone to donate their time, a local TV celebrity or national TV celebrity, or a noted author or speaker to come as the speaker on that platform. And you can incorporate food even virtually. Ask them to prepare their same food and present it. Prepare things that were traditionally done in celebration in Texas and what spins, creative spins they put on those. All of that can be done as an icebreaker segment for your on video competition or on video display or party if you decide to do that as an online team celebration. You could set up a tour at the Black Museum or Cultural Museum or special exhibit that is dedicated to African Americans. Of course, throughout the country, there are tons of places. The Whitney Plantation in Edward, Louisiana, the Exposition Park in Los Angeles, California, the National Museum of African American History and Culture in DC. So many different places you can go, the Underground Railroad, just tours as a part of your celebration, depending on where your city is and where there might be some remote tours and things available. You could have a Juneteenth movie night if you decide to do that. There are some movies, Miss Juneteenth, 12 Years a Slave, Blackish. Some people would watch some of those in Black-led shows or movies. Atlanta, Homecoming, Watchmen, Harriet, 13th, Malcolm X, I Am Not Your Negro. You could choose that and you can do it in the office or you can do that online. And so this is another way to have a celebration. Of course, employees love paid days off. And with that, there should be some communication about what you would like for employees to do. Give them a suite of options and don't force one or the other, right? But give them a suite of options from commemoration to celebration to action of things that they could do. You could even have for your entire team, if you are able to have the paid day off, you can still encourage them to support the Black businesses that are in the footpath of your locations and companies. And if you have real estate, you can use that real estate site to bring Black vendors to vend their products, bring Black food trucks. They're in rising popularity around the country. Black food trucks to your site to service your employees. It's another way to highlight, even on a paid day off, we're going to have on the northwest side of our town or northeast side of our town or downtown or business district or central district area where Black food trucks are going to be. And you can have your employees encourage their families and other vendors, everyone in your ecosystem to support those businesses. You can host an office barbecue party. Again, be careful with the barbecue and expecting certain things that you will expect certain things that people eat. I had a gentleman, Caucasian gentleman, who said, in conversation, well, I bet you fry chicken good. I fry chicken good. Now, to him, that might have just been conversation, but to me, that was kind of a microaggression. It assumed that because I was Black, I could fry chicken. And as I delved into conversation with him, that's exactly what it was. He assumed that all Black people eat fried chicken and can fry chicken. While it's true I eat fried chicken, I cannot fry chicken. I am not very good at frying chicken. And so the point is, in your barbecue celebrations, be careful not to make assumptions that certain people will have certain affinities for or certain abilities based on their skin color, that they're going to want to do athletic stuff, that they're more athletic, that we're just naturally athletic and all of us want to get out and play ball as a part of a barbecue party, or that all of us are going to eat watermelon. Not everybody will, and it's not bad to necessarily have it, but don't expect that all Black people are a monolith. And so keep that in mind when you're setting up a barbecue party. I talked about supporting Black-owned businesses. Certainly in this hybrid situation, a lot of the foot traffic has disappeared to restaurants and companies that we would have frequented just walking the footpath, the foot trail of our foot space, if you will, of our headquarters and offices. But you can go back to those organizations, especially the Black-owned ones, and support them today or support them on the day of your Juneteenth and continue to support them. Share their coupons, share their flyers, share information about them, referrals, word of mouth, so that those businesses can be elevated and thrive as well. You can have a company cook-off if you decide to do that. A Juneteenth sports day. Be prepared that there will be those that would not necessarily participate. So many different virtual campfire is one of the other suggestions. Juneteenth is an important day. It's an important day to remember historical African American heroes and celebrate the end of slavery in the United States. Employees can engage in many activities and organizations as well. And it is an imperative that you separate out Black people from persons of color for Juneteenth celebrations, to show that you are uniquely interested in and inspired by and inspired to elevate your Black employees, suppliers, vendors, and those within your ecosystem. I'm going to go to the second replay video that I would love for you to see. It's all about this recipe. I believe that there is a recipe for Juneteenth celebrations. And here is the recipe. It's Marcus Holmes on Passion Fridays. Here's the first ingredient. Can you see that? This is the first ingredient that I'm putting in my recipe bowl that I'm going to stir up. It's amalgamate tahini. Amalgamate tahini. What do I mean by that? The word almost of the day is intersectionality. That there are so many different layers or scales as it relates to our diverse existence on this planet in this earth school. That Black is not just Black, but it's Black women. It's Black men. It is gender expression women and or men that are Black. There are so many intersectionalities. But before we really have a recipe for Juneteenth, our base has to be to combine all of these things, of the things that we are together. Who are we? What is the who-ness? Amalgamate, combine the who-ness that we have the singularity of commonality. No, we're not all women. No, we're not all men. No, we're not all LGBTQIA+. No, we're not all Pentecostals. No, we're not all Methodists. No, we're not all Baptists. No, we're not all middle class. No, we're not all upper class. No, we're not all in poverty. No, we're not all bachelor's degrees. No, we're not all master's degrees. No, we're not all doctorate degrees or letters. No, we're not all high school GED. No, we don't all live in the suburbs. No, we don't all live in the city. But we have a wholeness that has to be amalgamated for the purposes of getting the power out of Juneteenth and bringing it forward into our everyday lives. For your base, I submit, you need to amalgamate the who-ness. We are good with saying what separates us, what makes us different, why we aren't Muslim, why we aren't Baptist, why we aren't Bethlehem Israelite, why we aren't, you follow? Why we shouldn't necessarily associate with them. But we must get to a unity, a oneness of who we are. No, we're not all of those things, but of those things, we are all Black. We are all African American. We all are descendants of great people who were enslaved. And we must unite for that purpose. So I'm stirring that up. And we got to stir that up real good. Because if we don't get that base right, we will never have the dish that we need to have. We will never have the Juneteenth that we need to have. The second thing I say that people often say is not the second thing, but I say it is the second ingredient. It is, we need to organize. Yes, we have the NAACP. God, thank God for the NAACP, thank God for the Open League. But in mass, we are not organized. We need to organize because we have a common wholeness. And once we understand that if those folks in Galveston, Texas hadn't been notified of their freedom, we all won't truly free. And if we all aren't living out the purposes of that freedom, that all men are created equal, we don't have truths to hold self-evident, but we must self-evident, we must amalgamate in our base and organize. We need to organize. The next thing I say, once we organize, we have to strategize. And I believe there's an economically strategize. We have to bring our resources together and plan what we want to do, what we have the resources to do, what resources we need, and how we're going to go about getting them. Okay? So we got a plan. After we organize, people say, well, you should plan first. Let's organize first so that people will not go off into these factions about what the strategy looks like. Let's do the organize of the things that we have in common first, and then strategize. And today's strategy could be as simple as just buying Black. we decided that we were going to withhold anything today on Juneteenth that did not go into Black communities, Black businesses, Black people, but a powerful statement we would make. And while big conglomerates like Procter & Gamble have done a lot to widen the view, let's make them widen the pockets. We must strategize, and there's an economic component to it. Then I say we mobilize. And the mobilize is not organizing for the sake of being organized. It's organizing in a fashion now that the strategy has been given. We are getting get your mark, get set. We're on the get set so that we get prepared to move out in an orderly fashion, in a strategic fashion, with marching orders after we've mobilized, after we've organized rather, and after we've strategized. Now we can mobilize our efforts, our intentions, our teams, our groups to accomplish what the strategy says. You must add mobilize. It won't rise if you don't mobilize. Stirring that mobilize good. And when you think you've stirred it, as my mom would say, you got to really stir it. And lastly, you got to vote. And vote means your voice is engaged in the process to me. It does mean going to the ballot box at the appointed time, but it also means attending your community meetings where you have a voice to vote, where you have a voice to say, no, we don't want that kind of business in our neighborhood. Your presence and your voice must be heard more than midterm and general election, more than the mayoral election and city councils and boroughs in your cities and towns and villages and counties and townships. You have to be present with your voice on a regular, active basis. And that is what I'm calling vote. You mix all those up. Now, you don't have to worry about the heat, because the heat will be turned up once you start mixing these things up. You better believe me, the oven will be hot. And the more you mix this up and the more noise it makes, the hotter that oven's going to get. The heat only causes the mobilize to rise higher. It only causes the who-ness to deepen its roots until you're ready to lay your batter and your demands to rise. What? No, that's not the end of the recipe. You have to rinse and repeat. And you have to teach others how to do this very thing. So Simone, my glorious creation is actually ingredients for Juneteenth. It's a Juneteenth recipe for us to amalgamate the who-ness, for us to organize on the things we have in common, for us to strategize around economics and power, for us to mobilize after we have organized and gotten our strategic plan, and to use our voice not just in the formal process, but in every process to vote. Mix those up, stir those. Once you stir those, the heat is going to happen. It's going to be turned up anytime that you mobilize, organize, strategize. And you will have something that will rise out of Juneteenth with momentum to make the change that we keep saying we want to see. We keep saying we want to see reparations. We keep saying we want to see restorative justice. But the very ingredients that we have access to, we won't utilize. It's unfair to tell people not to celebrate Juneteenth when we don't formalize a plan to move beyond it. It is a wonderful start. It is not a be-all or cure-all, some special vaccine for racism. It's not. But it's going in the right direction if we take ingredients seriously to build upon it. I just wanted to come and wish you a very happy Juneteenth. And I hope that this recipe is one that you find easy to make, easy enough that you can start conversations in your area. Who are the people talking about reparations in your area? Who are the people that are like-minded in your area? And who are the people that are different? And how can you just have a conversation around amalgamating the who-ness, combining the who-ness of who we are? Meaning, maybe you don't espouse the lifestyle of the LGBTQIA+. But what is the commonality that you have with them, that you are both African American? Maybe you don't believe in women in leadership in the church and other organizations. And maybe it's time to have a dialogue with a woman in leadership so you get the other side of the coin, if you will, and see what you have in common. Amalgamate the who-ness in conversation, and then begin to organize around the things you have in common. There is so much strength and power in unity, but it's virtually untapped because we are inside of our own factions and we have lulled ourselves into a picnic that is as far from freedom as those folks in Galveston were awaiting theirs. That was an excerpt from one of our Juneteenth celebrations. I'm Marcus Holmes, the HR Passion Guy, and whether you're watching me here live on LinkedIn Live or via Restream on Facebook Live, Twitch TV, I know that there were some parts of it that had some muffle to it. That is replay content, so unfortunately I was not able to clear up the muffle that you were hearing, but I think it's great content if you are looking for a recipe for Juneteenth. You know, there are food choices that are included in recipes for Juneteenth, and so those specific things, amalgamating the who-ness and organizing and strategizing for economics and power and mobilizing and voting, those are the 5 ingredients that I submit are important for any Juneteenth recipe. Juneteenth would just be a celebration of one day unless you are committed to the amalgamation of people in the African American diaspora, separating them out from persons of color. They are the Black and BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and persons of color. So separating them out and looking at the who-ness of those people are across the African diaspora, amalgamating the who-ness, then organizing those people across all of those differences, right? Across religions and across belief systems and across sororities and fraternities and anything else that could be a slight delineation, organizing, and then strategizing. Now that you've come together and you have a common theme, how do you strategize to gain power and have economic strength? And then once you do that, then mobilize around those pillars that you have strategized so that you can go out and make your voice heard and vote, and not just in elections, but vote in your civic engagement. Vote at the cash register or at the click of the button. Where your money goes, there your power is. So utilize your power to vote. You are voting when you select to go to a non-African American business. You are voting when you select to send your children to non-African American institutions. That is a vote. I have even made that vote. Um, and and you have to be aware of that vote, aware of the consequences of that vote, the trade-offs for those votes, right? You are voting all the time, and you vote more often with your money. And your money is motivated, hopefully, by what you believe in, what you seek to espouse. I'm so grateful that you have joined us. And I just want to really quickly remind you that the gratefulness journey every day, what are you doing in the next 30 days to transform your life, is available on Amazon. This is the paperback. It's a 70 page tool that will help you live a more powerful life. How will gratefulness help you live a more powerful life? I'm glad you asked. Because what it does when you center your life around a practice of gratefulness, meaning every day you're practicing gratefulness, it shifts your thinking and it shifts your brain's pathways and portals to have shortcuts to the things that make you feel good. When you are feeling good, when you are thinking good, you are doing good, my friends. It puts you in a place to expand your borders and horizons, to achieve the things you want to achieve, and to bring to you the things that you want in your environment. How powerful would that be if you've ever lost or been angry or been hurt or been depressed? How powerful to you would it be to be able to have a tool that you can put into practice as a simple habit that will change you in the middle of all of the things that you experience and help you to move forward more powerfully, more gratefully? The gratefulness journey every day does that. It's from my personal account of my journey through gratefulness, and I hope that you will purchase it today. We also had during our Juneteenth celebration the opportunity to uh, hear a powerful prayer, and I will play as a close in a few minutes an excerpt of that prayer from the Right Reverend William Barber, who is legendary in his work towards the Poor People's Campaign and legendary in his social justice advocacy for African Americans. But just before I do, in the event on LinkedIn Live or on Facebook Live or Twitch TV or YouTube events that is passing through some CEO, some entrepreneur, some leader in an organization who is grappling with what to do for Juneteenth. You've not come to a full decision of giving employees a day off. You have not come to a decision of what you should do. And Juneteenth is upon us, so there might only be time for you to do a very thoughtful statement, right? But what you can do is begin the groundwork to elevating a separate elevation for Black people. And that's a tough call, even though many organizations have done it before you. But instead of a broadly painted brush of all diversity, and I think you should be after diversity of thought and diversity of all of these things that you've seen in this, have been alluded to in this live stream. Minorities and persons of color, but Black persons, Indigenous persons, persons of colors, I want you to see them as one, but three distinctly different. And elevating the causes and concerns of Black people who have been embroiled in a system, in systemic racism, from education through incarceration, right? Through elevation. And if you want to be intentional, start with where you are. Where are you? If you're doing absolutely nothing, you have no thoughts for your Black people, start there. What is the employee experience for Black people in your organization? Find the answer to that question. And what is the customer experience for Black customers that are customers of your organization? Find the answer to that question. And what is the supplier and vendor experience of Black owners with your organization? Look at those three things. And you almost have an end-to-end experience of people that are interacting, stakeholders that are engaged in your organization. And what can be done to improve their experience with your organization? If you embed that in everything that's foundational in your organization, that I am going to improve the experience of Black people in my organization, the experience of vendors that do business with me, the experience of customers that are the reason that we have business to be done, I'm going to improve it. You're going to see that you have plenty within the stories of those three segments to elevate your brand and story to the world. That's what your statement should be about. That's what your actions should be about. That is what will resonate with those three groups and with the broader groups beyond them. You will have recruitment and talent acquisition marketing from that content, from those stories, and brand. I'm going to say brand elevation, because it will elevate you. Even if you're a small business or a large organization, it will elevate your position for people to see that you're really serious about the people and the experience behind the stories. That's where you can start. And if you have nothing, you can start there. Your statement is, we're seeking to do better than we have done historically in the celebration of the freedom of enslaved people and those that weren't even aware that freedom had come to them. We're serious about our commitment to Juneteenth, and what you will see going forward as we synthesize the information from our customers, our employees, and our vendors, that we build an ecosystem where everybody is valued and everybody sees our value for people in the Black experience. And we're committed to doing that. Join us on the journey as we explore and gather information to achieve this ecosystem. Something similar to that, put your own words to it. I won't even charge you for that. And then build out, maybe through a design thinking approach, what is this experience and what is the future experience for each of those three groups? And start to build resources and people around it, and start to build milestones and timelines by which you want to achieve it. That's where I want every entrepreneur, CEO, leader in an organization that does not have some official Juneteenth celebration, that does not have some paid time off, that has nothing, and you don't know where to start. You're hearing everybody else is doing it, and you just, I don't know how to even approach it. You will find that across those three groups, people are going to tell you that they don't feel seen, they don't feel heard, they don't feel that they have a voice, and you can create some powerful, depolarizing conversations and opportunities for those that have power to hear those who say that they don't have voice, and an opportunity for you to give them power along with that voice. We're going to go to the prayer as we conclude from William Barber. It is an excerpt. And then I want to invite you to join us Sunday at 5 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Juneteenth celebration, a Father's Day celebration, joined together with Juneteenth celebration, because both of them are Sunday. And we're excited to be able to do that. It will include pre-recorded content of individuals that are in and around our communities who have shared awesome stories of their fathers for Father's Day. We will appreciate you joining us, and it will be shared across all platforms. So wherever you're watching today, you can come right back here to see that at that time. Thank you so much. And we're going to close with this prayer as an excerpt of prayer from William Barber. It is what we will call a Juneteenth prayer. God, we praise your name, for you alone are God. There is nothing, there is none like you, gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, full of love, truth, and justice. You care for the orphans and widows and look upon the immigrant with affection. Your love is not threatened by the ways we diminish, marginalize, and destroy each other. There is none like you. You have made your faithfulness known from generation to generation, and you declare it better to do justice than to make sacrifice. Throughout the biblical story, we hear again and again how you have continued to rescue your people, releasing us from bondage so that we might live fully and freely as your children. We remember Moses and the Exodus. We remember the cycles of deliverance and repentance under the judges. We remember the prophets and the returns from exile. And we remember where you declared in Isaiah 10, woe unto those who legislate people, robbing the poor and making women and children their prey. We remember how you have in all of these things made known your generous love for the least of these. We recall most of all how you entered this story in the flesh, releasing us from our sins through Jesus Christ's life, death, and resurrection. You reconciled us with yourself, and in doing so, you taught us to be reconciled with one another. Through the Holy Spirit, you continue to tear down the dividing walls of hostility and inequality that separate us from each other and distort your gospel. We add our voices to the generations that have gone before us in giving thanks for the freedom you brought in the United States when legal slavery ended. Over 200 years of European Americans shipping and trading African peoples as if they were disposable goods distorted our experience of your image, both in those enslaved and in those who enslaved others. Yet you have a history of overcoming our most dehumanizing abuses of each other, even when we normalize our abuses through words of law and government-sanctioned violence. Thank you for raising up faithful servants who declare and fight for abolition of injustice. Thank you for not abandoning our foreparents. Thank you for releasing us from the legalized injustices we have suffered. Thank you for your mercy and compassion, Lord. Remind us that we must remember and can never retreat. While we have made slavery illegal, too much of society continues to participate in systems, structures, and cultural patterns that diminish, distort, and destroy the lives of persons of color. Too many are still too enslaved to racism, to the goals of voter separation, to efforts to blocking living wages and health care. By your Spirit, free us, set us free. Use our remembrance to cause us to never retreat from working to see this nation and world released from the deceptive corruption that is in the hearts and patterns and practices that continue to be passed along from generation to generation. In remembering the day in which the slaves in Texas finally heard of their emancipation, we still cry out to you and are open to be used by you to end all slavery, racism, voter suppression, greed, hate, violence, poverty, denial of health care, environmental injustice, war, and the false religion of white supremacy and white nationalism. Lord, when we get tired, free us from apathy and inaction. Open our eyes. Search us, O Lord, and call us into action to bring an end to the injustices that are contrary to your way. Help us to never leave undone the weightier matters of law, justice, faithfulness, and love. May you make us into one people. Grant us the strength in your name to spend ourselves on behalf of those who are still entangled in slavery, so that together we might experience the full reconciliation and new life that you desire for all people. We offer this prayer that your glory and honor might be made known to the freedom of all people. Amen.